In this lesson, we'll cover things to keep in mind when setting up your scene, and we'll also create bone objects for the creature's vertebrae, gaster, and head. So here we have the game boss. Now, it's going to be really exciting. What we'll do is go through and we'll basically cover the entire rigging process, make sure that we build some really fun systems here. We'll also make sure that we automate these little arms so that we can control them by a multiplier, which is going to be another fun topic. I think you'll really enjoy that. Now, getting started, let's go ahead and talk about this scene. For one, we need to make sure that the scale is just right for Unity. So, since Unity works with meters, we can make sure then that our character is set up inside of Max for the measurement in Unity to work out well for us. Let's go ahead and take a look at something. We'll head over to Tools, Manage Layers. And what you'll see here is that our model layer right now is unfrozen. I've already added it since we'll be working with all of these layers anyway. Just simply went in and started out by creating them so we can save a bit of time. But you'll see here, if we now go ahead and select, let's say, the creature's body, and head over to our Utilities tab, underneath Measure, here's where we can get an idea of the height of our creature by looking at our Z dimension. So according to this is about triple the size of a normal human according to Unity's measurement scale. Alright, so this is going to be great. Our creature will truly be menacing when it is time for him to confront our player inside of Unity. Good stuff. Now, once you make sure that your size is just right, you can then go ahead and grab the entire mesh. You'd want to head over to, again, your Utilities tab, but this time we'd want to go to Reset Xform and choose Reset Selected. So when we click on that, what that's going to do is it's going to kind of reset all of the transform information on our mesh. So setting our scale back to 1, this is very important so that it doesn't throw off our scale in Unity. Now when we do this, if we were to head over to our Modify panel, you'll notice that we now have this Xform modifier on all of our geometry. So to clean this up, we can simply go ahead and highlight everything, head over back to our Utilities tab and choose Collapse, Collapse Selected, using the first choice, Modifier Stack Result, so that we preserve the type of mesh this is. So if this is an editable poly, it will remain an editable poly instead of being converted to an editable mesh, which is what would happen if we would use the second choice. Alrighty. So once we're done here, you'll then notice that the creature is pointed in the negative y-axis, again, so that he will point correctly inside of Unity. Now, what comes first? Should we reset the Xform and then reorient the character, or the other way around? Well, of course, it should be the character that gets reoriented first before we go ahead and reset our Xform. You can see that it's already taken care of in this scene, so we don't have to rotate him at all. But if you ever needed to, again, you just go ahead and highlight all of your pieces, go ahead and grab your rotate gizmo. At that point, you can make sure that you're rotating, let's say, with world mode. You'll see if I try to rotate him now, where he's going to pivot from. So how could we handle a rotation like this just to make sure that he's not offset from the center? Well, you could always go ahead and create, let's say, a helper. You can go to your Create panel, go down to Helpers, and create a point helper. And then from there, you can go ahead and have it snap to your grid. I'll press the S key to enable the snapping tool. We can right-click and make sure it's set to grid points. And then we can simply go ahead and click right there at the center of our scene to create a helper. At this point, you then want to increase the size of the helper. I'll press the S key again to disable snapping, but we can go ahead and bring up the size a bit more. We can now go ahead and select our model. A fast way of doing that, since it's already added to our layer, is to just go ahead and go to our model layer and choose Select. Great. Now at that point, you can go ahead and grab your link tool, link to your helper. I'm not going to do that because he's already pointing in the right direction, but you'd link to your helper, and then you could go ahead and rotate that helper however you'd like to reorient the character. Once you're finished, go ahead and delete the helper, reset the X form on your character, go ahead and collapse it down. And then another thing I'd highly recommend that you do is that you go ahead and Alt right click and choose Freeze Transform, just to go ahead and make sure that your character will always come back to this position when you choose Transform to 0. When you Alt right click and choose that option, this is just to be on the safe side and make sure he'll always get back to this position in case he's accidentally offset. Just to show you how this works, if I were to just go ahead and move him, go ahead and Alt right click and choose Transform to 0. Notice how he pops back. Great. Alrighty. So with that being said, we can go ahead and take a look at the layers we have here, just so we know what we're building. So of course we'll have control objects, very important. All of our bone objects will be added to our envelope layer. Our hidden layer, these are objects that affect our rig, but that should not be seen by the animator. And then we have our IKs, and then of course our model. Okay, so with all of this said, let's say we go ahead and begin creating the creature skeleton. What I'll do is go ahead and freeze the model layer so we don't accidentally select our creature here. If I were to Alt right click to grab the animation quad menu, you might notice that the right side of my menu is a bit different from yours because I've added several tools that I use quite often in the rigging process. So here's a section for constraints, for bone tools, inverse kinematics, for groups even. How do we do this? Well, it's actually really simple to do inside of 3ds Max. You'd head over to Customize and choose Customize User Interface. From here you'd go to the Quads tab. Then you could go ahead and choose whatever quad menu you'd like to work with. Here's the animation quad menu. So now it's just a matter of finding the tool inside of your All Commands list. Let's say if we wanted to find the orientation constraint. You can click inside of the list and press the O key a few times. That'll bring you to the O section, and then you can go ahead and scroll down until you find the orientation constraint. I think I'm really close. Really close. There it is. And then you simply go ahead and just drag and drop. It's as simple as that. If you don't want it any longer, you can always go ahead and right click and choose Delete Menu Item, and now it's removed. What about these lines here that we see that kind of organize each section? It's known as a separator. You'd simply go ahead and add that wherever you'd like. If you don't need the separator, just go ahead and right click and choose Delete Menu Item. It's as simple as that. Then go ahead and save out your quad menu. I've named mine Custom Anim. So you can go ahead and save that out so that you can always get back to this menu to save you some time. And then here's how you would load that in. Alright, great, but just wanted to point that out to you because it kind of saves a bit of time when we're working inside of 3ds Max. So it's time to get started. Let's go ahead and press Alt-W to move over to our side view. I'll now go ahead and press the Z key so we can zoom in to each panel. Going back to the left view, we can go ahead and Alt right click and grab our bone tools. Go ahead and bring these over. Another way to do this, of course, is to go to Animation. We'll find them here. Here are constraints, IK solvers. So most of what we will be building in this section, of course, can be found here. Alright, so let's say we go ahead and choose Create Bones. We can now go ahead and start to build the creature's root. What I'd like to do is actually start by snapping to grid if we can. Just kind of helps to keep things clean. And I think that this is going to work out well because when we go ahead and create a bone object for the gaster, we could just simply go ahead and snap to grid to keep our bone object straight. So pressing the S key to enable our snapping tool, again we could just right click and make sure it's set to grid points. We'll now go ahead and create a root bone object. So there it is. I'll now go ahead and press the S key to turn off snapping. And we'll go ahead and start to create the creature's vertebrae. Alright, so there's the back. Go ahead and draw this out to create the chest. And then the neck. and then we'll continue this bone object all the way down to about the end of the head. We will want to segment that, of course, but we can do so easily using refine. So now that we have this bone object in place, watch, we can go ahead and grab refine. We can now click where we'd like the head to pivot from. And there we have it. Alright, great. So from here, since we have our root bone, watch this. We could go to Tools, we can go to Manage Layers, and we can go ahead and hide our model. It's very easy to create the gaster bone object. It's just a matter of going back to Create Bones. I'll go and press the S key to enable snapping. If we were to go ahead and click right on top of that bone, you could see how it's going to place the next bone we create on the child bone of our root. So how do we get around that? Well, it's actually really simple. Let's go ahead and right click to make sure that that bone is not made. We'll go ahead and click near the root, and then we'll go ahead and click away to create the end nub for this chain. Let's go ahead and right click again to exit Create Bones mode. Next, we can go ahead and grab this bone object here, and we can essentially just snap it over to our root, and there we have it. So when we go ahead and press the S key to disable snapping, you can see everything is nice and clean. Beautiful. If you ever needed to go ahead and space out your bones a bit, you could always go ahead and turn on bone edit mode, and you could start to adjust your bone objects until you manage to find a good position for each. So if we go back to Manage Layers here and we turn on our model, it's a good idea to just make sure that every bone is in the correct position. So the chest, I might slide that forward a bit. So it's right around where the thorax would pivot from. And I think everything else looks great, except for, of course, the gaster. Let's go ahead and grab that end bone object, and we'll go ahead and just pull that in just a bit more. Alrighty. So from here, again, we'll go ahead and hide our model. It's a bit distracting, so we'll just go ahead and hide it for now. Let's go ahead and work on adding all of these to our skeleton layer. So we'll just go ahead and highlight all of our bones here. We'll grab the envelope layer, and we'll now go ahead and choose Add. Alright, sweet. So they're all added here. Now, the next thing we can do is go ahead and make sure we link our gaster bone object to the root. So everything is connected and part of just one entire skeleton. So everything works well inside of Unity. Now, once that has been linked, we'll go ahead and grab our root. We'll press Control Page down to grab all of our bone objects. We'll go ahead and Alt-right click and choose Freeze Transform. Remember, we do that to make sure that we can get back to our skin position easily. So if we start to move this chain, we notice, hey, we need to bring it back. We'd simply go ahead and Alt-right click and choose Transform to 0. Beautiful stuff. Now notice that weird behavior we got when we started to move our bone objects. Why is it happening? Well, you always want to check bone edit mode. So you can see our layer manager was kind of covering it up, but with that off, now when we try to move this chain, it does not happen. Alright, this would be a good time to go ahead and rename these bone objects, and then we'll go ahead and stop the lesson. So this is going to be really straightforward. The root bone here will be named bn_root01. We're using a prefix of bn because these bones will be added to our skin node. Now, any nubs that will not be added, we can use a prefix of be. That way, when we search for all of our skin bones, all we need to do is search for the bones with bn_, and we'll be good to go. Alright, we'll go to the next bone object. That's going to be bn_back01. The 01 is simply a way of letting us know how unique this object is. If this is ever a 02, we know that it either needs to be renamed or it's an extra object that's not needed. We'll go to the thorax, get that renamed to bn_thorax01. For our neck, well, we'll get the idea. That's bn_neck01. bn head 0, 1. And then for our nub object here, that is BE. Remember, because it will not be skinned to. BE head 0, 1. The gaster, let's go ahead and take care of that. That's going to be BN gaster 0, 1. I'll go ahead and copy this name and use it to rename the nub. And instead of a BN, that will be BE. All right, sweet. So this is a good time to stop our lesson. We have essentially the vertebrae built, the gaster ready, the head and neck ready. So let's go ahead and continue building our skeleton in the following lesson.